Knowing how to use make.com is one of the most powerful skills that you can have today, because when you know how to use make.com, you don't only have a high income skill, but you also have a superpower that is going to help you and your team to do more with less. And in a fast-paced world like the one that we are living today, being more efficient and being able to do more with less is extremely important. And because of that, I'm creating this video where I'm showing everything that you need to know in make.com in less than 10 minutes. And trust me, because if you stay till the end and you understand all the concepts, you're going to be ahead of 90% of the people, because I'm going to be talking about everything that I wish that I knew when I was starting my journey using make.com, and also the tricks that I have learned after building hundreds of automations for me and for my client. And if you're here, I guess because you already know what is make.com and why it's so powerful, but in case not, I'm going to quickly explain it so we are on the same page. This is a homepage of make.com, and as you already know, this is a software that helps us to connect apps and design workflows that are going to help us to automate stuff. And the reason why make.com is so powerful is because you can select the apps that you want to use, and then you can connect them with other apps by simply using drag and drop module and filling all the different variables that you want to have as output. Then I also want to do a quick overview of all the different things that we're going to see today. So first of all, we're going to learn what is JSON and what we need to know. Then we're going to learn the difference between a module and the HTTP request and when do we have to use each one of those. Then we're also going to learn how to use integrators and aggregators and its differences. And last, we're going to learn what are the make.com functions. And the first thing that we're going to learn today, and is going to be extremely important in order to understand all the concepts that are going to come afterwards, is going to be what is JSON and what do we need to know about this. So as you can see here, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and basically it's a lightweight format that we use to transmit information from one app to another. And as you can see here, we have an example of JSON. And JSON is important because it's going to be the way of transporting the data from one app to another inside make.com. And we need to know three things about JSON. The first one is that in JSON, we're always going to have a pair name and a value. This means that first name, for example, is the variable that we actually want, and then John in this case is the actual value of that variable. Then the other two concepts that we need to know is JSON objects and JSON arrays. And the main difference here is that an array can be a group of objects, and inside every object we can have multiple variables as first name and last name with multiple values as John and Doe. And as I mentioned before, JSON is going to be a way of transmitting information from one app to another. But the problem with make.com, and especially when we are working with OpenAI, is that we don't receive the strings in JSON format. And I'm going to show you an example here, and as you can see here, we're using a parse JSON module, and actually after you start to use make.com, you're going to see that this parse JSON module is going to be one of the modules that you're going to use the most. And the reason why we're doing that is because, as you can see in this OpenAI module, we have obtained as result this JSON that we have here. But this JSON that we have over here is formatted as a string, and consequently we cannot use it in next module. And for that, what we're going to do is basically to use this parse JSON module. To use a parse JSON module, it's actually very simple, because the only thing that we actually need to do here is to input the variable that we want to parse. And as you can see, we're going to obtain this pair name and value, where basically this value is the one that we're going to be able to use in further modules. Now that we have seen how to use the parse JSON module, that, as I said, is one of the most important modules that we have in make.com, we're going to go to the next step. And in the next step, basically, we're going to learn the difference between a module and HTTP request, because indeed both of them are the same, but the modules are easier to use than the HTTP request. And here we're going to do an example. So here basically we have a make.com scenario where we don't have absolutely anything. As you can see, one of the first things that we can do once we open a new make.com scenario is to select one app, and it's one of the apps that we can quickly select. Here has specific functions that we can quickly select. So we're going to do an example with Airtable, for example. So as you can see here, there is different actions. We have watch record, watch responses, search records, get a record, create a record, and we have different actions, okay? So each one of the different actions that we're going to have here is going to be a different module. So for example, we're going to use the watch records module. So once we add it, the only thing that we need to do is to create a connection with the specific software, and once the connection with the specific software is done, the module is going to be ready to go, and we will just need to connect it to the other apps that we want to use. And for example, in this case, to make sure that the module is correctly set up, we just have to create a connection, then select a page that is going to be basically the database that we're going to be interacting with in Airtable, and I'm going to select this one, for example, and then we just need to select the table. And obviously, depending on the model that you are using, we have to create one connection on another. So for example, in this case, I'm going to select the table draft ideas. Once we have the draft ideas, we're going to have different options, like the trigger field, the label field, the limit, the view, or a specific formula that we want to use. But anyway, don't pay too much attention to this, because depending on the specific model that we are working with and the specific app, we're going to have different different parameters that we can select. And now we're going to see the difference between a module and an HTTP request, because indeed it's very similar. An HTTP request is going to be also a module that we have inside make.com. But something that you need to understand that actually many people miss is that a module is an HTTP request. It is already formatted by make.com, so we just need to literally fill the fields, and we don't need to add the headers, authentications, or any other parameters, and we just need to worry about filling the field. And this thing of filling the fields actually makes it extremely easy, because as you can imagine, we just need to put here the different formulas, the different parameters, and basically all the information that we need to write without needing to add any HTTP request, any JSON, and literally anything that requires any kind of development knowledge. And indeed, with an HTTP request, we can actually do exactly the same that we are doing with these watch record modules. But the main difference is that with the HTTP request that we have here, that is also a module of make.com, is that basically we need to fill the URL that we need to send the request to, then the method, then the authentication headers, then the parameters that we need to send. And if you are not a developer and you are not familiar with all these terms, this might be a bit complex. But the thing that I want you to understand is that we can do exactly the same with this HTTP make a request module. If we have the headers, the authentication, etc., than with any other make.com model that we have over here. It can be Slack, Airtable, Notion, Hotspot, or literally any app that is available inside make.com. But because of this and the HTTP request being a non-formatted module, in case that there is not an app inside make.com that we want to use, we can easily use an HTTP make a request module with the right URL, the right headers, and the right parameters. And the output of that request is going to be exactly the same as we were using any app with a make.com module. And now that we have seen what is a module and what is an HTTP request and what is the main difference between them, we're going to see what are the webhooks and how can we use them. And also we're going to show a use case and a make.com scenario where basically we're showing the two main types of webhooks. And the use case is the following. Basically we're going to have this form where we're going to fill some details like the full name, the phone number, the email, and basically we're going to go through all the different steps, okay? The first thing that we need to do is to explain what is a webhook. And a webhook is basically a URL that we send information to, where basically we can receive any type of parameter that then we can use in our scenarios. And when those webhooks or URL receive information, the scenario that they are at is going to be triggered. And this is actually super important because it's going to help us to perform scenarios in the backend that are going to be triggered right after the user make a specific action. And a good example of this is basically this form. This form is basically for a transportation company where basically we capture all the details of that specific user, including the address of the start of the ride, the number of hours, and basically all the information that we need. And what is going to happen is that as soon as the user clicks this button and fills the form, we're going to be sending information to a webhook, and that webhook is part of a make.com scenario that I'm going to show now. So this is the make.com scenario, and don't pay too much attention because I'm going to quickly explain what happens here and basically what we are doing, and then I'm going to explain what do we do with this custom webhook that we have at the beginning, and then what do we do with this webhook response that we have here at the end. So basically with this custom webhook that we have over here, what we're going to do is to receive all the parameters that we have captured in the form, and these parameters can be the first name, the billing address, the starting point, the card that they want, and basically any type of information that we want to input in this webhook. Now I'm going to quickly explain what happens in this flow, but don't pay too much attention to it because this is just an example, okay? So basically what we're doing here is to capture all the information of that specific user, and then here with these 4 Stripe models that we have over here, we're going to first create a customer, then create an invoice, and then to send the invoice to the customer, okay? What is this webhook response that we have over here and why this is so important? Imagine that the passenger fills all the form with all the contact details, all the right information, the card that they want, and basically everything that they need. And then after they submit the form, nothing happens. That would be bad, right? Because basically they are filling all the information basically for nothing, because then we have to do a quotation and then we have to do other stuff. And this is basically what a webhook response does, because with this webhook response that we have over here, what we're going to do is to send a response to that specific webhook that we triggered at the beginning, and in this case what we're going to do is to redirect to that specific customer to the payment page. As you can imagine, this actually makes a difference because it's not the same the fact of filling a form and then waiting 2, 3, 4 hours, even 24 hours to make the payment and basically purchase the services that you want to purchase, rather than waiting 5 or 10 seconds so all the scenario that is running in the backend is completed, and then with a webhook response basically redirect that customer to the checkout page that is basically a Stripe payment page. And as you can imagine, a functionality like this one where we receive information from a custom webhook and then we send a webhook response is actually crucial for this specific company. And if we go here to the models that we have available, as you can see, basically we have the custom webhook that is triggered when we receive data, and then we also have the webhook response that is an action that we send to that specific webhook. Then we also have the custom mail hook, but to be honest, I never used it in more than a year, so don't worry worry too much about it, because the ones that you are going to use is basically the custom webhook that receives the information, and then the webhook response that basically sends an action to that specific get. So now that we have seen the difference between the two types of webhooks, we are going to see what is an iterator and what is an aggregator, okay? And for that, we're also going to have a real use case where basically we're going to see both modules in action, okay? So as you can see, this is an iterator and basically this is an aggregator, but I guess that this doesn't say to you a lot. So basically we're going to go to this example that we have over here. And in this example that you see over here, basically we're using different iterators, and then we're also using an aggregator, okay? And now first I'm going to explain what an iterator is, and then I'm going to explain what is an aggregator and what is a real use case. And what an iterator is basically a function that is already integrated inside make.com and that separates the data bundles that we obtain after using a module or an HTTP request. Because for example, what is happening here is that first we're obtaining the transcription of a YouTube video, but that transcription is going to have several lines because it's going to have multiple objects inside an array. And what we want to do here is to obtain individually those objects from this array. And basically the thing that you need to spot here in case that you want to know when are we working with an array or not is basically these gaps that we have over here, okay? So if we are working with this gap at the end, it means that basically we're working with an array. And if you don't see these two brackets that we have over here, it basically means that we are not working with an array, okay? So basically we have this variable here, 11.data, and then subtitles, okay? And what we need to do in order to obtain individually the subtitles is basically to iterate over this array. And the output of this, instead of having an array with multiple objects, is going to be to have the different objects separated in different data bundles. And once they are separated in different data bundles, we're going to be able to aggregate them into a script. But this is something that we're not going to see today because this is actually a bit more advanced, okay? But now we're going to go to the aggregator and why it might be relevant. So as you can see here, we have the aggregator, but before we have two iterators. First, we have one iterator over here that basically split all the different YouTube videos that we were obtaining from that specific YouTube channel. And then here we have this iterator that was basically dividing the different scripts of that specific video. And as you can see here, we have iterated two times. The first one where basically we obtain all the videos, and then the second one where basically we separated all the script of the video. Because the iterator, remember, that divides different arrays into different objects so we can process them individually. Here basically we were obtaining the YouTube videos of a specific channel. And as when we are obtaining the YouTube videos of a specific channel, first we need to iterate over all the videos because we want to treat them individually. But then in order to obtain the transcription of the videos, we need to iterate again. Then here we're going to aggregate the scripts, but then remember that there is an iteration with the videos that we didn't aggregate it yet. And if we don't use this array aggregator, what is going to happen in this updates YouTube channel module is that instead of updating the record one time, we're going to update the record exactly the amount of videos that we retrieve over here, because then remember that this iterator is already aggregated with this text aggregator. And as you can imagine, the iterators and aggregators are crucial functions inside our make.com scenarios. And now let's go to the end of this make.com guide. And basically what we're going to do here is to explain the functions, okay? First we're going to understand what is a function, then we're going to say what are the most common functions, and then we're going to see an example. And in order to know what is a function, we're going to go to this make.com scenario, okay? And this make.com scenario has different functions, but I'm going to show specifically these ones over here, okay? This obtain transcription function and then this count characters function. So basically I'm going to click here, and as you can see here, there is two replace functions. And an action inside make.com is basically a predefined action that we can perform in a string, that we can perform in an array, in an object. And inside make.com actually we have a lot of functions, and if we want to use one function or another, the only thing that we need to do is to click here and then to go to this tab, okay? So here we're going to have general functions, then here we have mount functions, then here we have text and binary functions, and then here date and time functions. And depending on the operation that we actually want to do, we're going to use one function or another. And if you understand the functions and how they work and how you can use them, the way that you are going to use make.com is going to completely change. But don't get scared because it's not that hard, because mostly the functions that I use are this replace function that you see, format date and format number. And with those 3 or 4 functions that you are going to be mostly using in your make.com scenarios, you are going to have at least 80% cover. And if you are not very confident about that 20% left, what I always do, and it always works, is to ask ChatGPT to create a function for making Integromat that does the specific action that I want to perform. And with this review of the functions, we are finishing the video. And trust me, as I said at the beginning, if you understand all the concepts and you start to apply them from today, you are going to be ahead of 90% of the people using make.com. And if you like the video, please give a like and subscribe because it really helps a lot.